Hello world, welcome back to the Razor RC, and we got a fun one for you today. We are doing the 1A scale Nitro Race Buggy Shootout between the top three, like top tier race buggy RTRs that you can buy. If you haven't checked it out already, I already reviewed a shootout of the lower end race buggies, which was the Kyosho Inferno Neo 3.0, the HPI Racing Trophy 3.5, and the Losi 8. Those were RTR buggies that sold for around $470 or less, so they range kind of between $350 and $470. But what we've done is collect the three high-end race buggies that you can buy in their RTR formats. We got the Kyosho Inferno MP9 TKI4 V2, kind of a mouthful there. We got the Hobao Hyper VS2. This has been out for about a year, and the newest one on the block, the Serpent SRX8 Nitro RTR. This has been out for about, I don't know, 4 to 6 months or so. So this is the order that they were released. The Kyosho is the oldest, the Hobao in the middle, and the Serpent over here on the right is the newest. They all started about $500. The Kyosho is $500. The Serpent is just a hair less at about $497, $498, something like that. And the Hobao is the most expensive at about $605, although it does depend on when, the prices kind of fluctuate a little bit. I will have links in the description below where you can pick any of these up. I also have full reviews of all these vehicles, so you can check them out in all their glory. Really long, detailed, comprehensive reviews. But what we're going to be doing right now is just a little shootout of these three buggies, talking about the pros and cons of each of these. I'll talk about them briefly, what I like or dislike about the three of them, and finally we'll pick a winner. We're going to find out what I think is the best RTR Nitro buggy you can buy, so this is going to be pretty exciting. Starting out with the oldest buggy in this shootout. This is not that old. It's about a year and a half, 2 years old maybe at the most. This is the MP9 TKI4. Now this is based on a little bit of an older race buggy from Kyosho. They do now have the MP10, even the TKI2 version. So this is a few, probably 7-8 years old now at this point. But this was their race buggy just in an RTR format now. It does come in that nice orange gray colors, and like I mentioned, it does sell for $500 here in the US, and this is what it looks like. Pros of the Kyosho: the engine is phenomenal. I think this is the best 0.21 engine in any RTR vehicle. I do have pretty much every RTR Nitro buggy you can buy out there, and this, in my opinion, is the fastest. This is kind of the leader in the 0.21 race class. It does come with a nice polished tuned pipe. Mine's a little dirty and a little old there, but it is pretty nice out of the box. Tires are pretty good, sort of all-around compound. They're fairly soft. They are foam-filled. Work in a variety of situations, dirt, street, all that kind of stuff, and they got the nice white dish tires. One of the other huge improvements or nice things about this is the radio. The Kyosho Synchro KT331P radio is phenomenal. This is the best RTR radio out of all these, and probably the best RTR radio you can buy, period, that comes with any vehicle. So pros of the Kyosho: it is a full-on race buggy. It drives like one. It does have the nice aluminum shocks. It does have the fast engine. It does have, kind of a low-end race level radio, whereas the others are really more like RTR radios. Parts availability is pretty high for the Kyoshos. This buggy's been around for a long time. You can still buy MP9, even kit parts, the high-end race parts you can buy. Like I have here, I have actually the shock tower from the MP9 kit version. But yeah, a lot of parts still available. Kyosho America is easy to get parts. A lot of distributors, hobby shops will carry Kyosho parts. So Kyosho is like the biggest brand among the three of these. Easiest to get parts, easiest to get support, and so that's one of the really strong advantages of this. Disadvantage of the Kyosho: I think this is kind of the weakest. I think this is the easiest to break. I didn't have too many major issues, but definitely the front shock tower is an issue. They did beef it up in the V2 version, but even the new one still bends pretty easily. It has no cross brace or anything like that, so that does bend pretty easily. Also found the chassis to bend pretty easily. So this is an aftermarket chassis. You can buy the kit version, which is pretty pricey at $125. This is actually another company. I think it's Team Option or Fiorni or something like that. This one's pretty nice because it has a little gasket, but really you probably want to look into a 7075 shock tower, maybe a 7075 chassis. I did find both of those to bend pretty easily, and so yeah, that's kind of one of the weak areas. But other than that, no major issues. It's fast. Maybe it's not the best handling, but it still handles quite well. A lot of tunability options, a lot of option parts to improve this vehicle, and it does have the fastest motor, which is something you're going to want. So those are the pros and the cons of the Kyosho MP9 TKI4. Next up, we have the Hobao Hyper VS2. This is the most expensive at about $605. So it is definitely quite a bit more, about $100 more than the other two. But you get something with that. There's a reason why this costs a little bit more. It's made in Taiwan as opposed to the other two, which are made in China. It does have all 7075 premium aluminum parts throughout, so this is much closer to race kit quality in my opinion. Even though it comes as an RTR or even an almost RTR, you can buy it without the engine electronics. The parts quality, everything is much more race level in my opinion, so you get additional durability with those premium parts. Nice polished tuned pipe with a full-on actual spring tensioners there to hold it on. 7075 chassis there on the bottom. The motor now is a 0.30 engine, so it's not race legal. Really, you want a 0.21. So if you wanted to race this, probably better to get the almost ready to run and add your own race legal engine and probably a race caliber radio. That's again another flaw I think of this vehicle. It comes with like the worst radio of the three of these, pretty much unusable in my opinion. And so I don't run the stock radio on this. I actually run a RadioLink radio. I think the fuel tank also is not 225 cc, so you probably have to buy the 125 cc option part. I think this is 150 cc's, but it's really nicely equipped. All high quality 7075 aluminum throughout. Servos are pretty good. Wheels and tires, not the greatest, probably the worst tires in my opinion among the three of these. I'm not really sure what these are good for, and they're not great in dirt, they're not great on the street, so that's another thing I think you might want to look into. And I did crack actually one of the wheels on the front, so they're maybe not the most durable. But pros of this thing, hugely durable. I think this is for sure the most durable among the three of these. Race-wise, yeah, it doesn't handle all that well. You definitely want to do some tuning on this, maybe change sway bars, definitely change shock oils, diff oils, that kind of thing. I do have a video on changes I made to the setup to get this to drive a little bit better. But even with all that, this is a much heavier vehicle than the other two. Does not handle quite as well, and definitely you want to put in some time to try to get to handle better, but I'm not sure you can actually get this working quite as well as the other two. It does have large 17mm shocks, so they are quite plush. The springs are a little bit on the stiff side. But last thing I really don't like about this is the pull start. It does have this green cop system where you have to use a separate handle for that. Not a fan of that, but it does work. It's just something extra you have to consider. So anyways, that's the Hobao Hyper VS2. Certainly one of the stronger vehicles to consider within the Nitro class. And that brings us to the newest vehicle within the three of these, the Serpent SRX8 Nitro RTR. This is a couple of generations old. I think they had the Evo and then the Pro after that, although a lot of the parts are compatible, so you can still definitely get some of those parts and try to modify them or bolt it onto these to make it a little bit better. A lot of people like the SRX8 the best. Serpent is definitely a well-known race company within 1/8 scale racing and on-road and Nitro and all that kind of stuff. And this vehicle looks pretty premium. It does have the nice 0.21 Serpent engine. It does have the nice tuned pipe with the the spring connectors there. I like that a lot. The car looks pretty quality, and it's got the nice gold anodizing on the shock tires, the nice aluminum shocks, sort of this bronze finish on all the outdrives, the drive shafts. Everything on this thing screams quality. I don't think it's exactly the same as the kit version. The aluminum parts, in my opinion, are not 7075 like the kit version. They're probably 6061, but they are nicely machined. They are nicely finished. Certainly a level above the Kyosho, and I think they use a little bit better metals on this as opposed to the Kyosho, but they're not quite up to the Hobao Racing quality aluminum. Other advantages of this: suspension is excellent. This is much better tuned out of the box than I think the other two. It handles the best of the two as well, or the three. Just drives really neutral, flies through the air really well. The suspension, the shocks, everything works excellent. I think the tires are pretty good as well. A little bit more of a soft, loamy, loose dirt rather than a high traction dirt, but they work pretty well as well. The whole vehicle, a lot of people like this the best because it seems like the highest quality, and the price is actually the lowest. So you get a lot for what you pay for. At a few dollars less than the Kyosho, you're getting much better quality in my opinion. But the downsides of the Serpent, first off, the motor I think is the slowest. Now the Hobao is a cheater motor. It's a 0.30, whereas this is a 0.21 cubic inch engine. But even though it's the same size as the Kyosho, I think it is slower. Second thing that is probably the biggest downside of the Serpent is that parts availability is going to be a lot more difficult than the other two brands. Serpent does have Serpent America and DeSoto Racing here in the US. Probably a little bit easier to get parts in Europe or other countries, but within the US, this is a very small brand. For the most part, you're going to be buying parts online. You know, hobby shops are not really going to be carrying any Serpent parts, so that's a little bit of downside. And then the other thing is, I think parts inventory can be a bit difficult. Not every part is available here in the US. You might have to wait a little bit while you might have to special order something from Europe. So that's the other, I think, downside to owning a Serpent vehicle. It's nothing wrong with the vehicle itself. It's just that the support is not there. So yeah, the Serpent, great handling vehicle, drives really, really well. I think the radio is a little bit poor, but you know, I'm not using that, and you know, probably something worth upgrading. And then the other major downside, probably the motor, I think, is the slowest. But great vehicle overall. A lot of people like this vehicle the best, but we're going to find out whether it's the winner. Okay, so that was a quick overview of these three race buggies. As I mentioned earlier, we do have full comprehensive reviews, so if you want to know a lot more about one of these, check it out in the links in the description below. But now it's time to pick a winner. So this is actually a really tough comparison. This is probably the closest comparison of anything I've done on the channel. We do tons of reviews here, lots of comparison reviews, and for the most part, you know, it's usually easy and obvious to figure out which one is the best, but this one has been a little more difficult because they all have kind of pros and cons. None of these are perfect. I wouldn't say, you know, any of these is really a bad choice. It's just they have different strengths and weaknesses, and so we'll talk about that. First off, I think the most important thing is to decide whether you actually want to race one of these or whether you just want to buy one and bash it and just have some fun. For bashing, I think there is no comparison. I would definitely get the Hobao Hyper VS2. It's not race legal out of the box, but if you're not racing, who cares? It's got the biggest motor. It is a beast, way more power than the other two because it's like 50% bigger. So there's no replacement for displacement, and the Hobao by a mile crushes the other two in terms of power. It is the fastest by far. The second area where I think it shines is in durability. This thing is almost indestructible. I think it is a tank. I haven't broken a single thing on this race buggy, and I've crashed it as much, if not more, than the other two. So in durability, in power, this thing is king. Now downsides, it doesn't handle all that well. It's not race legal. Parts availability is a little questionable. You can definitely buy parts from Hobao directly here in the US, but that's pretty much mainly how you're going to be able to buy things. That's again a weakness, but if you're not breaking anything, then really that might not be such a big deal. So for bashing, I would pick the Hobao, but does that mean it's the winner? Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit. So now, assuming you're not bashing and you maybe even want to consider racing, you know, you're interested in this Nitro thing, and so that really leaves you with the other two buggies, right? So if you want to race, I would definitely pick one of these two. The Hobao, in my opinion, is not really a race vehicle. I think it's a premium basher, whereas these are kind of entry-level race kits. So advantages of the Kyosho: it is the fastest, it has the best radio, has the best part support. Advantages of the Serpent: a little bit premium parts quality. I think durability is a little bit higher than the Kyosho. The Kyosho, I think, breaks the most easily, and you definitely will want to upgrade some parts. Serpent, you don't really need to upgrade a whole lot. You know, this front shock tower is bent a little bit, just hammer it straight, or maybe buy the kit part if you want. Engine is slow though, and that is a little bit of an issue. None of these are really full-on race engines. They're really RTR engines, but the Serpent engine is slower than the Kyosho in my opinion. So for more power, more speed, I think the Kyosho is going to give you a little bit more. The Serpent is going to be slow on the track, in my opinion, compared to other race buggies and even compared to the Kyosho. So really you've got two different things. You've got handling and premium quality and a little bit higher durability, or you have power, a better radio, a little bit better part support. And you know, with the Kyosho, if you actually want to race it, I do think you have to upgrade the shock tower. I do think you probably need to upgrade the chassis. That's going to cost you easily, you know, $150, $200 parts just to get this to, I think, a reasonable level of durability. I haven't broken too much else, but that I think is pretty much necessary. The Serpent, I wouldn't say it's necessary. Maybe upgrade as you bend or break things, but the parts quality on this is decent. It's adequate as long as you're not, you know, slamming into the face of giants. But the engine, I think, is an issue, and I do think the part support is a little bit of an issue. So which of these two would I pick for racing? I think that's really close. I don't think either is a bad choice. You know, they just have different advantages and disadvantages. For me personally, if I were to keep one of these two for racing and, you know, sort of as my long-term vehicle, I would go with the Kyosho, honestly. I do think the Kyosho, it doesn't handle as well as the Serpent. The parts quality is not as well. You will have to make some upgrades, the shock tower, the chassis, but parts availability is really important. You want to be able to buy parts for your car. You are going to break something. No matter what you buy, you're going to break something on it when you're driving on the track and messing up jumps and, you know, crashing into things and that kind of thing. So the Kyosho, with better parts availability, with some upgrades you can buy. You know, the Serpent, it's a little bit harder to get like a upgraded chassis for that. They don't really make that anymore for that older engine. You can only buy the RTRM. But the Kyosho, even though it's an older kit, you can buy the upgraded chassis, you can buy the upgraded shock tower. The engine is phenomenal. I don't think you would have to throw this out of the box. It's just better overall, I think, in the long-term experience if you actually want to race it. The Serpent is a great car. Don't get me wrong. I really like it. But you know, there's a lot of little things that you have to consider, not just the way it drives. And even though the Kyosho doesn't drive quite as well as the Serpent, it is faster, and I think you can do a little bit of tuning, and I think you can get upgraded option parts and replacement parts just a little more easily. So those are my thoughts. If I were going to race it, I would go with the Kyosho. If I were going to bash it only, I would stick with the Hobao. Serpent is a great car. You know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that car. A lot of people love it. I understand why. It is a great car, but for me, I would pick either the Kyosho or the Hobao. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the like, share, subscribe buttons. Look for more videos soon. Thanks for watching.